What harm is wearing a pair of jeans actually doing in the grand scheme of things? Oh, and by the way, France allows you to wear jeans on the golf course.
Interesting. Wouldn't have guessed that one. Personally, I could not care less about somebody wearing jeans on the golf course. It would never in a million years offend my sensibilities.
Well, Golf Buddies Allowed number 8, here we are. Welcome back everyone to another episode. Where do we begin? So today, just to come straight out with it, today's topic, Jack, that we are going to debate, you and I, is one that gets people frothing at the mouth in golf, right? Which is dress codes. So the title of this episode is going to be Dress Codes in Golf, Do They Need a Dressing Down? All right. So we're coming out swinging here, okay?
Powerful.
But before we get into discussing the topic of dress codes in golf, Jack, you have just returned from Florida, have you not?
I have, yes. I just went on a buddy's trip to Stream Song. This was my only piece of merch that I bought because the pro shop was so expensive. I could only afford a $30 Imperial hat. It was,
or is that the reason, and or you just exercise amazing self-restraint?
Well, I think that's my credit limit right now is about $30. That's all I could go with.
Fair.
So basically, the deal was this was a old college roommate of mine who I reconnected with at a golf tournament last year. On a whim, I got invited to go back to Boston to play in like a commercial real estate golf outing. I have never been involved in anything commercial or real estate otherwise. So I weaseled my way in there through one of my friends who was a college teammate of mine. And when I was in that foursome, we got paired with one of my old college roommates who played on the hockey team at Boston College as well. And we were really good friends and we hadn't connected in 15 years or so. And we just picked up, right where we left off, had a great time and kind of committed to staying in contact with one another. And, not letting kind of time pass us by as it had the last 15 years. So that's probably a really good example of golfing yourself socially healthy, making connections and reconvening with people who you want to spend time with. And a couple weeks ago, he messaged me out of the blue and said that him and his buddies were going on a group trip down to Stream Song in Florida, which is a great golf resort and destination. And somebody had dropped out at the last minute. And could I make it? And I jumped at the chance and got to spend 3 days down there with a group of 7 other guys. We had a blast. It was a great time. Stream Song. I'm not the type of person, Chris, that does research before I go anywhere. I like to be shocked when I get there and kind of take in that whole sensory experience. Hindsight, that might have been not the best move for Stream Song. I don't know if you know anything about it, but they have 3 distinct golf courses, the black, the blue, and the red, and they're all ranked within the top 30 in the US. So it's a pretty cool place to go see great courses in quick succession. But they all have kind of unique styles. And the first course that we played was the black course, which is the newest of the 3. That was a Gil Hanse Divine. And I guess the best descriptor I could come up with is avant-garde. It was kind of a type of golf course that I had never experienced before in my entire life. I'll put it to you this way. First hole is a par 5. We were playing kind of the shorter tees, so the whole group could kind of be involved and make it accessible for them. Was on the green side fringe in 2 and ended up making an 8 on the hole. And that was because in the 35 feet between me and the hole was all these humps and bumps and mounds. And the green complexes at this course were unlike anything I've ever seen. It was absolutely insane. It was like an acid trip is what the course designer did before he put pen to paper on it. It was crazy, but it's always nice to see different types of golf, expressions out there and what courses can look like. And so we had a wonderful time. And I'll just say this because I think this was kind of my biggest takeaway from the whole trip and something that I wanted to share with you and can maybe be a segue into your other stuff is we played these 3 courses, right? All top 30 in the country. They also have an 18-hole par 3 course that's designed by Core Crenshaw, which is one of the top design firms in all of golf, Ben Crenshaw. And so we do all that. We had this great time. We play a match with each other. We have 2 different teams, maroon and gold for our college colors. And we're tied at the end of 90 holes of competition. So the tiebreaker was to go to the little putting course that they had there, which is a 36-hole putting course. Again, very avant-garde, humps, bumps, all this different stuff all over the place. We did an 18-hole putting contest, and we tied after that. So now it's 108 holes of being tied. So at the end, we said, okay, we need to settle this somehow. We decided to go from one end of the putting course to the other. And I'm not kidding when I say that's probably about 70 yards long, I would say, from one to the other. And it's, going through these crazy slopes. So we were literally taking half swings with our putter and hitting the ball as hard as we could to get it over to the other side. That was meant to be our playoff hole. We finished that, in one hole. The other team beat us, unfortunately. But we then stayed doing that sort of contest for the next 3 hours because we're all between 35 and 45 years old. And we're like little kids out there, just playing. What holes can we go to? How many different crazy shots can we hit? And I just think it was such a beautiful expression of what golf can be, how it can bring people together, and how you can have fun. Not only playing the expensive, really nice, top-rated course, but just on a random putting green with your friends. So it was a great experience, and I'm very happy that I was able to make it.
I love that. Well, that sounds like a really wonderful weekend. I wrote a few things down there as you were talking about it. I mean, first and foremost, I think you've just taken yourself into the vulnerability vault by admitting that you got on, you six putted essentially.
Well,
on
it was more like 4 chips and 3 putts or something back and forth.
But all kidding aside, like I'd love to know, like, how did that bother you at all? Like, did you take a hole or two to recalibrate and get yourself back on track, or?
Yes, of course. I'm definitely not the type who's like that zen out and be like, oh, I'm so happy I'm here. No, I made a freaking 8. Like I was furious, And I'm supposed to be like one of the better golfers in the group. And they're like, who is this kid, making an 8 from 30 feet, So I was rattled for the front 9. And then on the back 9, you know what I noticed, which is kind of an odd thing? My favorite part of golf I've discovered recently is just being out in nature. I obviously love being around people and the camaraderie and the quest to develop your skills and to shoot low scores. But I just love, love, love being in nature. That's the most peaceful and calming thing for me. And on about the 12th hole, we saw like 2 deer kind of like frolicking in the bushes by us. And I just like stood there for 30 seconds, just watching them and just being like, you guys are just the happiest creatures in the entire world. Imagine being a deer on Stream Song. As long as you can navigate the alligators, you're in pretty good shape out there. So it's like those little things, where it's like, what are the things that were golf yourself healthy about the trip? The social camaraderie, the challenge of kind of putting your skills to the test on this course and seeing if you can meet them, but also just walking around in nature in a beautiful place and feeling that sense of calm that comes with that. So
love that.
Yeah, it was kind of an all-encompassing trip in that regard.
Another question for you. So if I heard you right, you said the guy that you sort of had rekindled that relationship with is in real estate, did you say?
A lot of them are in commercial real estate.
So my question is, was there a lot of commercial real estate chat over the course of the weekend, like basically shop talk, where you're just like,
0.
I don't know what you're talking about here?
I mean, maybe a little bit at dinner, but I think they wanted to get as far away from it as possible. That was the point of being out in the sticks playing golf with people, is to not talk shop. We talked about everything else under the sun.
Well, you'll probably hear, I've got the window open in the podcast studio here, by the way, and Vinny and Mango are out the back bathing themselves in sun, and Vinny's just barking at anything that looks at him the wrong way. So the reason I asked you that question is I was telling a story recently to someone about when so one of my very first guests on the Golf Yourself Healthy podcast was a guy called Craig McKee, a fellow Scot. It was at season 1, episode 4, I think it was. And so he lost his daughter when she was in her early 20s. She had the same chromosomal disorder that Ines had, and he and I struck up a connection, and he's been running he's passionate, avid golfer. Every year in June, he runs a charity golf day for Max Appeal, which are the UK's leading charity who raise awareness for and raise money for research in de Jour syndrome, which is that condition that Innes and his daughter had. Now, Craig works in like the gas boiler industry, okay, like heating engineering and stuff like that. So like probably somewhere in the region of like 80% of the guys that turn up at his golf day work in that industry. And anyway, long story short, you come in at the end of your round, you're in the clubhouse, you're having some lunch, and it's just boiler chat all day. And I'm just like, guys, like get a room right now. They're all like, oh yeah, have you seen the latest Intergas model? I'm like, I genuinely don't care, and I don't know what you're talking about right now, but it was, I don't know, it was just kind of funny. Like it's just the dynamics that play out in environments where people with a shared connection or profession come together and they just can't help. I mean, I can't help myself sometimes as well. Like if I'm with fellow HR professionals or whatever, we'll just talk shop and whatever. But I'm glad to hear that actually that was completely parked at the front door, because it can be a bit ostracizing as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, they did a good job. I think the first event that I went to last year was a shotgun of 140 guys in the commercial real estate industry. And they were very much doing the boiler chat, after the round and talking. And I was just like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I'm just here for the golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's better this way for sure. So yeah, it was a great trip. I'll just say one other little funny thing is that, and I guess this might transition well to the clothing conversation, but I realized that my California public golf fashion sensibilities do not translate to a stream song type resort where, like this is my style, right? As that you can obviously tell, kind of like loud and fun and funky. And over there, everybody is, blue, white striped polo shirt, khaki pants, needlepoint belt, all that different stuff. And what was so funny is, have you ever heard of the phrase a scare logo?
No.
Okay. It's, I think, one of the funnier things in golf that is completely anathema to what I stand for. But it's something that if you have eyes for it, you can see all the time. So it typically occurs.
Sounds like I'm going to have eyes for it now, given
Yeah,
that you're about to tell me and the listener what this is all about.
it might be more of a US thing. I'm not sure. So you'll have to be the judge of that. But it typically happens in member guest tournaments, or I guess in places like this where it's kind of a golf destination. So you see guys who go out there and they will highlight the various exclusive places that they've been to via the logos on the apparel that they're wearing. So they'll have a super exclusive country club hat, a super exclusive country club polo, a super exclusive country club belt, and just be like, check me out. Look where I've been, right? And that's why they call it a scare logo in a member guest, because it's meant to like intimidate you that they've had, they're able to get behind the gates that you're not able to get behind. So we saw a couple of guys.
What a flex. What a flex.
Not my type of flex, but they enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure
we saw a lot of guys out there who were kind of head to toe with different logos and stuff like that. And I actually had to change my wardrobe slightly to kind of fit in with the people that I was playing with. I don't want to say it rubbed me the wrong way. It was fine to do that, but it certainly, even myself, with how much I love the game, how much I'm involved in the game, I too can still feel stifled by traditional apparel guidelines as it comes to the game, and feel like, oh, I'm putting on an outfit, or a uniform to go be acceptable in some arena, rather than just being like, whatever I want to wear, I can wear, which is very much the vibe in California. So it was interesting from that. And when you messaged me about your experience, which I'm sure you're going to share shortly, it was kind of timely and prescient in that regard.
I will just say at this stage, before we segue into this dress code chat, is that this is a reminder to our listeners that at the moment we're currently on a bit of a break from the GYH podcast. We're due to start up again in June. I will say, and just to share a bit of a teaser now, that we've had some really exciting developments this week in terms of the GYH podcast as it relates to how we intend to grow our kind of content strategy from the beginning of season 4 onwards. I'll say no more on that at the moment because literally that would, that's like spoiling the entire plot and defeats the object. But I will say, if you haven't already subscribed to the Substack, the Golf Yourself Healthy Substack, the link is in the show notes. Stop what you're doing now, pause this podcast, go click on the link in the show notes, put your email address in, and just get it done, right? Because that is where we'll be sharing updates on season 4, the release date of the first episode of season 4, the exact date in June, also details about future topics, themes, guests we're going to have on the show. Also, by being subscribed to the Substack, it will ensure that, so I want to run a poll, a bit of a poll and a survey to our followers, our subscribers, to give you a chance to ultimately shape the future of the GYH podcast and indeed our kind of wider content strategy in general, because I want to just take this opportunity. We're just a good bit over a year now of running all of our content. So I want to know what you like about the content, anything you want to see and hear more of, or even less of, what we could do differently to make your listening and reading experience even more valuable. But as I've said before, Jack and I are very much continuing with the Golf Buddies Aloud format. And in these formats, we cherry pick a hot topic in the world of golf, a topic which I would say will always, Jack, have a direct or indirect impact on the health, well-being and enjoyment of golfers of all abilities and from all walks of life. And so the topic we have chosen today is dress codes, and we're going to kick the tires in this, share our own thoughts, expertise and perspectives on it. And as ever, Jack, I think, I back us to be balanced, to see things from both sides, to play devil's advocate on a few things, and ultimately just leave our listeners with something to ponder and encourage them to sort of form their own view on it. But if I set the scene here, so I think it was last Thursday, just a few days ago now, I went to a local golf club with two of my friends who are likely to both listen to this episode because I told them I was going to be bringing this topic up. They are both friends I have made, like I mentioned to you recently, through these new parent classes that my wife and I have been going to. One of them got into golf in COVID. So, he's got the bug, he's fully converted, loves it. The other had never played golf before in his life. And so I think I can safely and somewhat proudly say that through my encouragement, I have brought him into golf. And, because I've been talking about golf for ages, and he's quite a sporty guy, pretty confident guy as well, and one of these people who, as was proven actually last Thursday when we went, got an annoying ability just to lend his hand to anything, and just he wasn't exactly flushing it like from day one, but at the same time his general coordination and he did pretty well. But so the place that we went to play has an 18-hole course. It also has a pitch and putt, and I think in terms of it's got a driving range as well. Now, I'm not going to name drop the golf club because I'm not going to do that. I just don't think that's right or necessary. But I think what can I say about this particular club? They are pretty old school, generally, in many, many ways. The place is quite tired. It's, in terms of like the exterior to the clubhouse and even the interior, it's just almost like, it's I don't know, like just everything about it, the bar area, the food that's on the menu, it almost had, me and the other guys were kind of saying it has a bit of a sort of a working man's club type vibe to it. Okay. It neighbors a caravan holiday park. So the interesting thing with that is you have essentially a bit of an audience there that are on the premises that are potential customers to welcome into golf for the first time. Because unless I'm mistaken, I don't think there's necessarily a linkage between that golf club and the caravan park. Who knows? Maybe they're owned by the same owner or something like that, but they kind of run as two separate things, okay? So I'm trying to paint the picture of this place was by no means an elite golfing establishment. It was of very modest means. So we turn up there, and my friend Luke, who is the new golfer, goes straight up to the golf reception and says, "We'd like to play golf, please." And he does it in such a way which is quite, again, such as his personality. He does it in kind of a way where he's like, "I'm new to this thing. What do I need to know? Just give me the golf balls. Give it." So so anyway, the receptionist is like, "Do you have your own golf clubs?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't." He was going to use his brother-in-law's clubs, but he forgot to take them with him. So issue number one, if you like, was he didn't have his own set of clubs. "Oh, can I rent some?" "Oh, well, they didn't have any to rent." So that was an issue for him and for them, right? An issue for them in the sense that missed opportunity for them, I would say, by not having higher sets for newbies. The bigger issue that the golf receptionist said was Luke was wearing jeans, right? So she was like, you can't go out on the course wearing those. "And do you have golf shoes as well?" So he basically didn't have any of the things that were required, let's say, per the club rules to be able to go out and play golf. Fortunately, so the receptionist wasn't pissy about it or anything like that at all. She was just matter of fact, like, "Sorry, but that's just them's the rules." And then we agreed, and they had a pitch and putt. So we're like, "Oh, let's do that. That's fine. We can go and do that. It's much more casual." He was able to, I gave him a wedge. He borrowed, because these are all 70-yard holes, okay? So just use a wedge, and he got by just using that. But anyway, we kind of, as you can well imagine in that scenario, it's like, I guess, not speaking for him, but maybe speaking for us as a group, the minute that scenario plays out, it introduces a slight kind of awkwardness into the air, and I was sort of feeling bad for Luke that had happened. And one of my first thoughts was, when you're brand new to golf, and if you, like in my case, are introducing a friend to golf for the first time, it didn't even occur to me to say to the guy, "Oh, by the way, make sure you do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't wear that, have this, have that." Because the very act of doing that almost feels like over the top, if you know what I mean, and actually could be construed as off-putting. Because just by airing that, you're sort of like, wow, there's this whole list of criteria, But anyway, it doesn't occur to you naturally, or at least it doesn't to me. I guess where we landed with it was to have a certain set of criteria with a dress code almost feels more appropriate, or you could understand it more if it were like a stream song, for example, like quite an elite or sort of a really upmarket establishment, okay, where it's almost aspirational to play there. But this is a place that is it is so far from being that. And it almost felt like tone deaf, or I can't think of the right expression if you know where I'm going with this. It's like, how is it that an establishment like that is able to be quite as picky, for want of a better word, around their clientele, essentially? So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to throw it over to you. Ask questions, or if I've not painted a good enough picture, then let me know.
No, I think it's fascinating. This topic couldn't be more. As I've shared with you, I'm working on building a junior golf apparel brand that seeks to solve this exact issue, where kids come to the golf course and it's their first time there. They show up in t-shirt and jeans. They don't feel comfortable. No matter how great the coaching is, how great the facility is, how great the class is, they don't feel like they belong. They get in the car with mom and dad and they say, "I don't want to play golf anymore." That's the problem that we're trying to fix with how I spend all my day thinking about. And it's very interesting that it also happens at this level. It's not limited to children or kids. It's any sort of beginning golfer. So I have several thoughts on it. Number one is I'm so glad that they have a pitch and putt. And I'm so glad that you guys get to go out there, because I am obsessed with pitch and putts. And I am obsessed with the concept of pitch and putts as a natural entry point for people getting into the game in a less intimidating environment, while also being a huge benefit to the most seasoned golfer who's learning to get up and down from 60 to 70 yards, which is where the game is really played. So I'm really glad that you guys had that experience. I'm also glad that the attendant or person who worked there didn't take on a pissy attitude and was more matter of fact. I think that certainly
Yeah.
helped in the experience. While you were sharing that, Chris, I was kind of going back and forth a little bit because in my mind, I mean, it's a little bit presumptuous, I guess, on your friend's part to just show up and be like, I'm here, like, give me what I need. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to a restaurant or something, you'd probably call ahead and be like, is there something I should know before I go here? There's a little bit of onus on the consumer to kind of take initiative and not just show up. But to your point, how would he know? It's your first time. So
I think also just to add into that point, if you don't mind, sorry, just and sort of in his defense was, I think again, like he's much like me, got a young kid. His life's pretty chaotic at the moment. He, works long hours. Like, he'd had a chaotic day, and like I say, he had a set of golf clubs that belonged to his brother-in-law who lives in France and hasn't used them in years, so they're kind of sat gathering dust. His schedule had got away with him that day, and he couldn't get to the garage to pick them up and take them with him. So anyway, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
And I think clubs should have a loaner set, that is available for everybody to play. That's an important part of being welcoming in that regard. I find it interesting in that I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I don't know if I can name a public golf course that I've been to here that has a specific outline dress code. That's more of a private course thing. I think, maybe they'll say collared shirts or no. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I guess I maybe just haven't pushed the boundaries of it. But I do think it's a little bit odd for a public course to stick, to those principles as much as they seemingly did here. It is a public course, I'm assuming, that you went to, right? Yeah.
Well, okay, so I guess this is where I just maybe this lies in the definition of what we mean by a public course. I would say yes to it being a public course in so much as a member of the public can just pitch up, pay a green fee, head out there. Right. They do have members. They clearly have members because, she mentioned them, and there's like, sort of like club champion leaderboards up in the clubhouse and all that jazz.
And I think what you mentioned about the caravan park being right there and kind of a missed opportunity on their behalf is a really good point. I think what I've noticed, Chris, is that, I think you did a good job in your kind of preamble there describing the scene, and it could really kind of envision what that place looks like in my mind. And I think it's an element of the human condition, I would say, where when you are more kind of staid and maybe a little bit run down, we probably don't want to use that phrase, but, older, I guess there's a little bit of that like insecurity and that desire to position yourself as higher than you are necessarily to kind of stay away from that association of being staid. So if you are strict on your rules, even while kind of your, surroundings are older, then you can kind of retain that element of exclusivity and premium and whatever. And it's kind of like also look around, guys, like this isn't exactly a bastion of like premium golf experience. So I have found that in certain places where just like people who are insecure about whatever tend to be a little bit louder, a little bit more intense about things that kind of are in that pain point for them. So I think what's important for these golf courses is to know who they are and what they represent and what they're trying to be about. Like I said, I think the fact that they have the pitch and putt is great, but maybe they need to adapt to the golf culture right now and be less focused on abiding by membership standards and being more open and welcoming.
Something that I wrote down in this little post-it note as you were talking, Jack, was the statement that golf needs to professionalize. Okay, so this is something that a couple of people have said to me that I've met who work in golf in the time I've been doing GYH. And these, by the way, are people who come from corporate backgrounds. And the reason why they're saying this is because their experience of being relative newcomers to golf, but being long-time corporate people, is that they're coming in and they're looking around them and they're being like, whoa, golf is really stuck in the past. And the way that it thinks about things and the way that it does things, it needs to yeah, it just needs to be more professional in the way that it kind of approaches certain things. And again, this doesn't need to be a criticism. I think what this is a reflection of is, and again, I'm speaking from a place of experience of having worked in governance on a board in a very, very similar golf club a year or two ago, where the people that have typically worked there in the past or been on the board in the past or who are members there in the past and in the present, they don't have, especially when, because where I live is in quite a rural area of the UK, right? So this is kind of a bit of a backwater in some ways. And so, again, not a criticism, that is just a fact. And in these areas, there tends to be less progressive thinking because they don't know any different or any better. They don't have exposure necessarily to what goes on in big cities, or do you get where I'm going with that? And actually, we also said as well is the interesting thing is that the golf receptionist, I'm pretty confident she didn't really care. Like, the only reason why she felt obliged to toe the line on the whole dress code thing was because she probably knew that if she had allowed Luke to go out there on the course and play wearing those jeans, she would have had a handful, if not more, complaints from members of a certain profile or generation saying, why have you allowed this guy out in the course wearing jeans, kind of thing? Because it's, I guess in a sense, partly it's almost like, what harm is wearing a pair of jeans actually doing in the grand scheme of things? Don't know. Oh, and by the way, in my research, France allows you to wear jeans on the golf course.
Interesting. Wouldn't have guessed that one. So I think a couple things there. Number one, I think the word professionalize is very interesting because when I think of professionalize, I think of probably the opposite of the way that they mean it. Like, professionalizing the game to me makes it more professional, dress like more professional. Professionals wear slacks when they teach golf, when they play golf.
I think what they mean, Jack, with that is kind of like the operating model, or almost like the kind of the governance and like bringing in certain corporate practices rather than necessarily, do you know what I mean? Like commercial acumen when it comes to like running rather than what you wear. Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Yeah.
I also think that it drives at the very heart of what a club means. A club does not necessarily owe a debt to the public to act in a way that benefits the public.
Mm-hmm.
They owe debt to the members who created the charter, who created the rules, who are the ones who decided this is the type of people that we want in here, this is the type of dress code we want to have, this is what we have. And you can argue the merits of whether clubs should exist, but that's the nature of them, right? Is they are beholden to the membership that defines them and makes them up. And when you're explaining about, for sure, the woman at the front desk doesn't care, but those people on the wall whose pictures that you saw who are long-term members, they're the ones who are going to say something. And actually, from my experience, I would guess that it wouldn't just be the jeans and the sneakers necessarily that is what aggravated them. But the fact that he was a brand new golfer on the golf course, a lot of times I don't take kindly to that as well, because there's a stereotype that goes with that. He's not going to be having good etiquette and raking bunkers and fixing divots and fixing ball marker. He's going to be playing slow. We don't play slow at this course. We have a pace of play expectation, all these different things. So I think that probably is in the thinking as well, as kind of raising the barrier to entry for them.
Yeah. No, and actually, okay, so in those last couple of things that you've just said, I think you've led us on to perhaps some of the most important issues at play in this whole subject, which is the way it actually ended up. It was kind of a happy ending, really, because it was probably the right outcome, in so much as, to your point, us going and playing on the pitch and putt was exactly the environment that Luke needed as a starting point to then graduate him in time, would be the goal, to the 18-hole course. And But with all of this in mind, I still think there's a role which golf clubs, should they choose to, should play in educating new golfers. Is sort of saying, just for you to be aware, right? Okay, like it's an awkward one. Okay, I don't know how you go about doing this, by the way, but it's almost like if you gauge that someone's brand new to the game, do you say to them, maybe pitch and putt? Do you want to start there first, and then we'd love to have you back in a few weeks' time, like, and then you can go out and play in the 18-hole course, because you can't necessarily turn around to Luke in that scenario and say, yeah, never mind the dress. Like, imagine you turned up and dressed well. It's like, are you a slow player? Oh, you're brand new to the game. Sorry, we're not going to, like, they can't not let you out in the golf course. But it's a really tricky one, isn't it?
I feel like I actually have stronger feelings on that side of it than the apparel side, because I do feel, and I understand you're just trying to get him into the game, have this experience. I think taking somebody who's never played golf before on an 18-hole, like full-length golf course is a form of cruel and unusual punishment to yourself, to the newbie, and to the course itself. It's like, that's like taking somebody who's just getting back into working out and saying, let's go do a triathlon. Like, that's a huge bite of the apple to take for your fun. And I would have, if I was at the front desk, I would have no problem saying, is this your first time playing? You're probably better off going over there. Like, that's just so much to consume and such a rich diet for your first time out.
But my point is, it's almost like, what's the script that the person at the front desk uses to that customer so as not to offend them, but equally to help them actually make the right decision, if you get what I mean.
I mean, personally, I feel like there's been that sort of level of conversation of, kind of what's your level of experience playing golf, and then kind of dictating it from there. I see all over the game in a way that's not demeaning or in any way like putting the person down. For example, I was fortunate enough to play Pebble Beach, right? And every time I go to the course, I typically play the tips. And when I went to go back to play the black tees or whatever, the starter was like, what's your handicap, son? Right? Like, aggressive in my face. And I was like, oh, I'm like a one. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if you're salted up, make sure you move up. It's like, okay, but he's like right there at it. At the junior program at the local course that I go to, they're kind of required to achieve certain thresholds before they're able to graduate to the next level, right? So the first test that they pass is they basically go 30 yards out, you got to get down in 4 on 3 straight holes or something like that. And then you move back and you move back and you move back. And then the final graduation is shooting under par from the tips for 9 holes, right? But there's a progression there of constantly getting there. So I think golf should do a much better job of educating individuals on the nature of that progression, because it truly is a marathon to get there, and does take a little bit of time to get there. It's also a far more enjoyable way of approaching the game. I play with so many beginners, Chris, who when I go and play the tips, they come back with me. And I'm like, you're not going to have a good time. Like, I will go
exactly
at the front with you. Like, I could use playing from the front tees to like learn how to go low on a golf course. Like, this game is so hard. Stop making it harder on yourself and like enjoy the process of leveling up at each stage. So I do think it's a little bit tricky, but I would like, I've had that conversation with people directly and just said like, I haven't said I'm going to play here, you should play up there. I'm like, come on, I'll go with you. Let's go play up here today. So it is kind of collegial and communal in that respect and not so off-putting. But I think those conversations do need to take place, because otherwise, left to their own devices, a 30 handicap will go back to the tips and play and just be miserable. It's like, if we really care about growing the game and getting more people into it, we want them to enjoy it. If you have the expertise on what's the best way to help them enjoy it when they're getting started, why not share that? I don't think that's a problem.
I think there is a very difficult, I suppose, experience tells me, balance to be struck by member-run golf clubs, which, as I was explaining to Jack and Luke, my two friends, is the whole operating model of clubs like that is that essentially they're not for profit. As long as they break even every year and they've got enough just to keep the club running in the interests of the members, and that's kind of the primary stakeholder group that they're serving first and foremost, then that's what they care about the most. And so therefore that could lead you into a mindset which says, yeah, it's nice that visitors come and they pay their green fees and it's an additional stream of revenue. But at the same time, we're not completely desperate for new people. Do you get what I mean?
For sure.
So I think with that dynamic, that introduces a complexity, which therefore means that in any given golf club that runs in that way, they're maybe less inclined to be so open-minded. Because I do agree with the earlier point you made, Jack, which is like, in fairness, they don't have to pander, for want of a better word, to anyone. They are their club. They have their rules. They run the way they run. But I suppose if, when all is said and done, I feel like when you and I get into these highly contentious subjects and debate it, we should kind of like prompt ourselves to say, so what? Like for you and for I, if golf could do one thing better or differently to address this subject, what would it be? Because I don't want to emerge from this conversation and feel like we've just kind of been adding noise in the system when there's already plenty of noise in the system about this. But what I will say before we get there is I'll include this link in the show notes. So, this article goes to show that this is a subject matter that has been debated on for years, for decades, right? So 10 years ago, National Club Golfer had this article which was entitled "The Great Dress Code Debate, Jeans," and the hashtag Team for Denim. So like, this is so interesting, okay? So there was one guy, this is back in February 2015, who said, What planet are you anti-denim people on? Frankly, I wear jeans almost every day and I run my own business, so I wear them to board meetings and to visit customers. I was in the British Embassy in Tokyo, Japan last year and wore them to meetings. And I read that and I'm like, now, I don't know what you know about Japanese business culture, Jack, but in my experience of Japanese business culture, that is about as traditional as it kind of can get, like as far as like hierarchy and rules go and stuff like that. So when I read an instance like that, it kind of makes me go, okay, that's interesting. But then sort of on the other end of the spectrum, hashtag Team Against Denim, you've got a guy saying jeans shouldn't be allowed in the clubhouse or on a golf course. Tradition is to be cherished, not cast aside by a bunch of chip-eating golfers. So, a little bit of a sting in that particular one. But suffice it to say that this is a subject which really divides opinion. Maybe if I go first here, Jack, I think if I could almost ask golf or like a golf club like that one just to do anything differently with this would be just revisit your dress code in the context of the year 2025. Okay? Because I don't know this for certain, but in my experience, dress codes are the types of things in golf clubs like that, which often get archived and don't get revisited for a while. They gather dust and it's something that just gets taken for granted, if you know what I mean. And it's not until you actually bring it out the filing cabinet and go, oh yeah, like then you kind of, again, just, open your mind, look at the landscape in the current world that we live in today and ask yourself, does this still feel fit for purpose? And actually, maybe just watch the word canvas opinion amongst your membership and then see where that leads you. Do a proper consultative stakeholder-led review, peer review, whatever, and then if the end result is stay with what it is, well, fine, that's your prerogative. But if you could make it that slightly bit more progressive, then I think commercially you'll probably benefit. That's my bit. What about you?
It's funny when you were saying that, my memory just got jogged back to a high school match that I played in my town at a local country club. And so I was in high school in like 2003, 2006, whatever. So kind of the heyday of Tiger's run. And Tiger went through a stretch where he only wore those mock neck shirts. Those like Nike dry fit mock neck. So of course, went out and got a few of those, and I wore them to a match. And the guy from the club comes up to me on the first tee and says, you have to have a collar on. You can't wear a mock neck. And I'm like, Tiger just played Augusta in a mock neck. I think it should be fine here, but I literally had to go into the shop, buy a shirt and wear a different one. Right. So it's an issue. It's been an issue. I think people wearing jeans, like personally, I could not care less about somebody wearing jeans on the golf course. It would never in a million years offend my sensibilities. I think it's strange because it's not super comfortable. I would feel so uncomfortable playing in jeans, but, to each their own. I love what you said about revisiting the dress code. And I think a lot of this harkens back to the same conversation we had about Pitch London, right? And, do these indoor facilities have a responsibility to get more people into the game? And I loved how they responded on Instagram and made that comment that they think they're doing it through the various means that they are. And I just think that this is too big of an ask, but this is the only place that my head goes, is we just need to shift the narrative around golf from how can we make people feel less welcome and ensure we contain that air of exclusivity, and how can we make more people feel more welcome? Like, that's, to me, the heart and the spirit of the game. Is not the score that's on the scorecard. It's not walking around in nature, as much as I love that. It's about putting out an open hand and getting other people to enjoy the same thing you do that has brought you so much joy in your life. And I think that we should all kind of reframe our mindset around the game, and how can I be that helping hand? If the game has done anything for you, how can you bring 3 people in with you, right? For the church that I go to right now, is just Easter this weekend. They always do a thing where they say, bring a friend, right? Bring somebody in. And I think that's the mindset for golf. And you did a wonderful job of bringing Luke there. And I'm glad that he didn't have that negative experience, but just framing it in, how can we make people feel like this game is for them and accessible to them? Because if they can feel that way, Luke's going to go out and buy the trousers and buy the shoes and buy the clubs, and he'll be there. You just can't put up a stop sign and say it's not for you. I don't think that's the right mindset. So the more people who we get thinking like that, the better off the game will be, because we certainly need diversity of opinions and perspectives to be involved in the game, and not the same tired and old ways of thinking.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, one of my biggest takeaways I'll have from this conversation was one of the ones that you brought up, was around how actually in this scenario, maybe the issue at play was less about the dress code, and it was more around putting the right sort of support network or infrastructure or pathway in place for someone like Luke to actually be ready to take on the big course, essentially.
I mean, that's been my biggest learning, not to go too much further on this, but Top Golf has been so popular around here. Pop Stroke, the putting version of that, mini golf, right?
Yeah.
It's people into the game, it's getting them the first time. And then all the question is, well, how do we maintain this momentum that golf has? How do we keep, all this success of new people getting into the game? Well, you need to create a pathway. Going from Top Golf to the first tee at your local 18-hole course is an enormous step. What are the steps that you can take? That driving range, pitch and putt, group classes, whatever it might be, that can help guide that person along so they're ready when they arrive to truly enjoy it. To me, that's by far the biggest missing ingredient in the game right now, is we do not have the infrastructure of pathways to allow people to graduate through each level of the game.
Maybe we should fill that void, Jack.
I'm trying every day. That's my mission in life right now. I mean, it's like I said, my goal in life is to have the place where I teach my first tee classes to make it into a pitch and putt. I think it's like the most perfect venue ever, and it's the best way to get kids and beginners into the game. And it's important to have as many of those as possible.
Amen. Right, let's leave it there. I need to jump in the car, head over and spend lots of money on my teeth. Because I visited the dentist for the first time in about 3 years the other day, and I came out with a itemized invoice or bill that makes for very, very unpleasant reading. Converting pounds to dollars per the current exchange rate, probably about $1.25 to the pound. This amounts to approximately $2,000 I need to spend on my teeth. Embrace the rough, cherish the fairway.